Well, good morning. How's everybody doing? It's good to see you guys. You guys in the back service as well. I know we got some people in overflow today. Man, y'all ready for summer to be over? Who's ready for the kids to go back to school? No? Oh, see, you're that one mother. Just raise your hand. I'm just kidding. My wife would raise her hand with you, I think. Would you raise your hand with her? No, liar. Okay. I'm just kidding. She's going to be like, I hate it when you talk about me in the sermon. Okay. We are starting week 3 of A Warrior's Heart, where week 1 we looked at Goliath, and we talked about how a warrior's heart was a person with a warrior's heart is a person that walks with God behind them. We talked about how we can come up with all the plans in the world. We can come up with the greatest, largest of weapons in order to fight the battles that we have to face. But man, a person that has a true warrior's heart that really follows after God, follows with Christ right behind him. We talked about in week 2 when we looked at Gideon. We talked about, hey, when we say, hey, God, we want you to be our strength and our core, and we want you to fight our battles for us. Sometimes God asks us to handle our battles in crazy, amazing, weird ways. And in Gideon's life, he asked him to do some weird stuff. I mean, smash jars to defeat armies. These things don't make sense, but God sometimes doesn't make sense. And we said, hey, when God gives you a plan on how to handle your marriage, how to handle your relationships, how to handle your job, how to handle your walk in front of people, man, he may ask you to do some crazy stuff, and your job is to trust him, maybe question him, but after you've questioned him, to say, God, if that's what you want, that's what I'm going to do. We talked about, I don't know if you remember this, we talked about how we're all in a war with Satan. We are all in this situation where Satan wants to take us down. He wants to destroy our hearts. He wants to destroy our passion for God. He wants to use anyone and anything he can to get in between you and your relationship with God. And whether you realize he's at war against you doesn't really matter, because he's still coming after you. And we talked about how sometimes we go, well, I'm a passive personality, and I don't really like to fight. And so, this series just probably isn't for me. But the reality is this series is for everyone. Because whether you want to call yourself a warrior or not, Satan is looking to take you down. It's the equivalent of going on the Vietnam battlefield or the Iraqi battlefield or the Afghan battlefield and going, you know what, I'm not really into war, and so I'm just going to sit this one out. They're not going to go, oh, okay, you don't like war. They're just going to put a bullet in you, and they're going to move on. And that's what Satan is doing to so many Christians who say, I'm not got what it takes to be a warrior against God, for God against Satan. So today, I want to challenge you one more time, a third and final time, how to be a warrior and have a warrior's heart. How many of you love movies? Anybody? I went this week and watched Bourne. It's Jason Bourne. I went and saw Bourne, then I went and saw Bourne Identity. And man, I love those two movies. They were so good, right? They had such an awesome plot. And so my friends are like, let's go to the 12 a.m. movie on Thursday. And I'm like, no. Because there is not a movie after 9 p.m. that I will stay awake in. I don't care how good it is. I will be snoring, and my kids will be hitting me going, you're embarrassing me, stop it, right? I mean, that's just me. Anybody else like that? I don't know why it is, but I will fall asleep in any movie after 9 p.m. So at 11 a.m. on Friday, I took Chris Gardner for his birthday, and we went and saw Jason Bourne. And I was all excited, man. I was like, dude, the first 2 storylines were so good. I cannot wait to watch this. And I did not like it. I did not fall asleep, but I didn't like it. It had no storyline. It was just a bunch of people running around shooting people. Well, I figured that much, right? I want a story to go with the shooting people, okay? Because that would be really good, but there was no storyline, right? And I was starting to think about this sermon today, and I was thinking about what I saw on Friday, and I thought, some of the greatest plots and storylines are right in the Bible. And I don't know if you realize this or not. You may not be a Bible reader. You may not know the story that we're going to talk about today. But when I tell you this story today, this real-life account, this real-to-life story, you're going to go, wow, man, there's some crazy stuff that happened in the Bible. And what we're going to find is we're going to find it in the book of Esther, okay? So if you find Esther, it may take you half the service to find it. It's kind of hidden in the Old Testament. While you're finding that, I'm going to take longer than normal to kind of tell you the story of Esther, and then we're going to apply this to what it means to have a warrior's heart. Let me set the stage for you. There was a king, his name was Ahasuerus, okay? And Ahasuerus was a rich, rich dude. He was so rich that he decided he would have a 180-day celebration in which everyone could gawk and awe at how rich he was. He would have people come in and look at his palace, and they go, oh yeah, you're rich, Azuris. And for 180 days, they did this. At the end of 180 days, they had a party that lasted 7 days. Now, I don't know how many of you were party animals when you were a kid. I was not the party animal when I was a kid, probably because nobody liked me. But anyway, I was not a party animal, and some of you guys were, but I'm here to tell you, nobody had partying down like the people in the Old Testament. This Bible says that Azuris partied for 7 straight days, right? And at the end of 7 days, I don't condone this part, but he was drunk off his butt, okay? And he decides that he has shown everybody all of his wealth in every way that he could possibly show them his wealth. And I can just see this guy who's drunk, who's sitting around with his buddies, 5 or 10 of them. He's at the end of this 187 days of showing my riches, and he goes, what else could I show him that I got this rich? My wife's kind of hot. I mean, that's basically what he did. And he said, get Vashti out here. We're going to show her to you. And he says, put her crown on her, bring her out. I want to show everybody how hot my wife is. And I want her to dance for him. So here comes the people. They go to Vashti and they go, Azuris is kind of off his rocker, and he wants you to dance for everyone and put your crown on and show everybody. And she's like, no, I'm not doing that. And so Azuris goes, what? People do everything I ask them to do. So all of his men, they kind of gather around him. They go, dude, you can't let your wife tell you no. If you let your wife tell you no, then our wives are going to tell us no. You got to get rid of her. And so he gets rid of Vashti. He doesn't kill her, but he puts her in a castle by herself for the rest of her life. Tough life. Get away from the guy who treats me bad. Such punishment. All right, so anyway, 2 years pass, and he goes, you know what? I'm kind of lonely. I kicked my only queen out. I need another one. And so he starts a real, here's what's funny about the Bible. We think that the bachelor concept that you watch on TV is a new thing, right? Azuris starts real life bachelor. So he basically sends all of his attendants out and he goes, go find the hottest women in the land and bring them back. We're going to have a contest, and which one of them is hot, that's the one that's going to become my queen. Does that not sound like The Bachelor? I mean, I don't watch it every week. I don't watch it any week. That's not true. Anyway, real life bachelor, here he comes, and out of the crowd rises this girl named Esther. Now, Esther had a cousin whose name was Mordecai. Esther's mom and dad were killed somehow. We don't really know how, but she ended up kind of an orphan in the home of Mordecai, her cousin. And they lived lived plainly. And until the moment in which they started going out looking for girls. She was really beautiful, the Bible says. She had a great figure, the Bible says. I'm just reading it off the page. And it said that the king would like her. So they took her, and she built a relationship with one of the people who were supposed to make her beautiful. And he put her in position before the king so he could get a good look at her among all the other ones. And he selected Esther to be the queen. Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm Esther and all of a sudden I have a horrible life where I was an orphan and I probably scraped meal to meal, and all of a sudden you stick me in the castle with the king and I have 3 squares a day and clothes nicer than everybody else, and I'm drinking out of golden goblets and living in this huge mansion, I think life got just pretty darn good, right? And isn't it like God that when life gets really comfortable, he presses on you with something that you never expected? That's kind of what he did to Esther. Now, Esther hired Mordecai, her cousin, who took care of her, with a little bit of nepotism. He said, hey, I'm going to give you a job in the king's court. While Mordecai was working in the king's court, he hears about 2 guys who want to kill Azuris. And he goes to Esther and he goes, hey, these 2 men want to kill your husband. You need to let him know. He thwarts it, and he writes down Mordecai's name in the book of Chronicles, okay? Now, keep that in mind because you're going to need to know that for this story. I know it's a lot of plot, but I got to kind of give it to you. In replacement of those 2 men that are going to run his country for him, he hires this egomaniac named Haman. All of us went to high school, and all of us knew that one guy who was such an egotistical jerk, right? That you could not have a conversation with him because he was so in love with himself. Haman loved him some Haman, let me tell you something. And he decided, and he got the king to agree to this, that everyone he walked by should have to drop to their knees and bow down in honor to Haman. Who likes that guy? I mean, seriously? You got your groceries and you got everything and you're heading home and you have to set them down and bow down to him because he thinks he's so important? I mean, really? And Mordecai, who believes in the 10 Commandments that we shall have no other gods before us, says, hey man, my God says, I'm never bowing down to you. and he won't bow down to Haman. Now, Haman is such an egomaniac that most people would just like punch him in the face and move on, right? If you were Haman. This guy decides, no, I'm not just going to hurt Mordecai because he won't bow down to me. I'm going to commit complete genocide. And he goes to the king and he goes, man, there's just people that won't follow you. I think we need to wipe them off the earth. And the king, because he's got an ego too, goes, yeah, good idea, wipe them off the earth. And all of a sudden, there's an edict out that in just a few months, every Jew that lives in the land is going to be murdered, wives, children, kids, everybody, right? And Mordecai, the word says, finds out and is broken. It says that he puts on sackcloth and ashes. You know, when we mourn, we kind of cry a little bit. We tell a friend. We kind of lay in bed depressed for a couple days. When a person that day got upset, they would wear something called sackcloth and ashes. They would cover themselves in soot, right? And then they would put on this like burlap sack with a hole cut in it that was covered in goat hair. And the reason why it would itch so bad that every time it itched and it was horribly uncomfortable, you would remember the plight that you were under so that you could mourn it some more. Don't know why, but that's what they did, right? Okay, so Mordecai is in sackcloth and ashes. Esther finds out. She goes and gets some clothes from over at Route 21 and says, hey, take this over to Mordecai. He needs some clothes, right? And so she has the eunuchs take the clothes over to Mordecai, and Mordecai goes, no, you don't know what's going on. You don't know why I'm mourning. Take this story and go tell Esther. And he sends the story of what Haman's going to do. Esther goes out to meet with Mordecai. He goes, you got to talk to the king. She goes, no, the last person that went and talked to the king died. And if you don't have his permission to talk to him, he will kill me too. I'm not going to the king. And Mordecai looks at her and goes, girl, you were raised in my house. And I'm here to tell you that you are by grace of God sitting in that castle right now. And if you don't say something, God will still rise someone up to take your spot. You will still die. Don't think you're safe. And who knows, maybe the only reason that you're queen is for such a time as this. Maybe that's the only reason that you have the life that you have. Now, you need to do something about this. So Esther sat there and she thought, and she goes, okay, you're right. Send everybody out to fast and pray. I'm going to go talk to the king. And she sets up a time to go in, and she walks in knowing that she could die. Can you imagine? You're Esther. You all of a sudden had your life completely changed. You're going, dude, I'm living in the Holiday Inn Express every single day, and you want to ruin my day, Mordecai. I hate you. Okay, here we go. I mean, that's basically what's going on. And she goes, king, I need to talk. Please don't kill me. I mean, you know what I'm saying? And he goes, Esther, what's going on? And she caught him in a good mood, right? Because God is behind her. Why? Because she prayed and she fasted with people before she ever walked in. Because they knew that their weapons against the king was not weapons of war, but it was God. And as she walks in, he goes, what do you want? Up to half of my kingdom. She goes, I just want to cook you dinner. Really? Yeah, and bring Haman with you. I want to cook you both dinner. So that night, she cooks him dinner. And the king goes, now what did you need to talk to me about? She goes, can I cook you dinner tomorrow night and tell you then? I think she's a little scared. He's like, yeah, we'll do dinner again. Now, Haman is thinking, dude, I am really somebody. The queen has invited me to dinner twice, right? And he's walking home, and he walks right by Mordecai, and Mordecai turns and completely ignores him. And he rages as he walks home, and he goes to his family, he goes, I got to kill this Mordecai. It cannot wait until this genocide thing I'm doing, he's got to go down. And his family goes, man, you're important. You need to hang that guy on a 75-foot gallows so that everyone in town sees that nobody jacks with Haman. And he goes, that's a good idea. Construct it. And so his friends build a 75-foot structure. He goes on to bed thinking nothing of it. He thinks, I'm going to talk to the king in the morning about how I can kill Mordecai. That night, the king must have ate Mexican, because he had a little bit of indigestion, and he got up for some Rolaids, and he could not sleep. And the Bible says that he was reading the book of Chronicles, that he wrote down about people in his kingdom, and he came across how Mordecai had saved his life from two people who wanted to take him down. That next morning, Haman walks in and goes, hey, I got to talk to you about something, king. And the king goes, hey, before you do, if somebody was to save your life and do something incredible, what would you do about it? And Haman goes, well, I'd get the best horse, and I'd get a huge robe, and it'd be royal, and I'd walk him through town and say, how great is this guy? He saved my life. And the king looks at Haman and goes, that's what I want you to do to Mordecai. Don't it stink when you're proud? God resists the proud but gives grace to the humble. I mean, doesn't he? And man, he destroyed Haman right in that moment. Can you imagine being Haman? You want to kill him, you built a gallows for him, and you're like, he's awesome. I mean, that's basically what you're doing, right? So dinner that night comes. We're getting to the end of this thing. Dinner that night comes, and Haman's sitting there, Esther's sitting there, the king's sitting there, and the king says, okay, you built me dinner for 2 nights, or made me dinner for 2 nights. What do you want? And she goes, I want to save my life, and I want to save the life of my people. And he goes, what are you talking about? Somebody has set out to genocide my entire people group. Who would do that? That guy. I mean, that's basically that guy right there. And he's like, the king is enraged that he was fooled by Haman. He goes out to the garden to think, and while he's out there, here comes Haman over to her because he's such a manipulator. And he goes, hey, I need you to save my life. I need you to save my life. I need you to. And there's a rule in the king's court in this day and age that if you got within 7 foot of the queen and got caught, you were instantly executed. Because that was a sign you wanted to take his wife. When the king comes back in from the garden, he is leaning on her, the Bible says, and it looks like he's making a pass at her. And the king takes him and hangs him from the 75-foot gallows that he had built to kill Mordecai with. Great story, right? They ought to make a movie. Okay. Now, why do I tell you all this? Because there's a couple verses that I want you to focus in on. The first one is in Esther chapter 1, verse 10. There's some things that I think we learned from this story I want to show you real quick. Are you ready? Esther chapter 1, verse 10. On the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, in other words, he was drunk, he commanded Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, Abagtha, all the people with bad names, Zethar, and finally Carcass. How would you like the name Carcass? What's your name? Carcass. Okay. The 7 eunuchs who served the presence of King Ahasuerus to bring Queen Vashti before him with only her royal crown in order to show the peoples and the princess her beauty, for she was lovely to look at. And Vashti said, nah, ain't going to do it, right? Here's why. There are 3 things I want you to get out of this that I think a warrior has to get. Vashti took a moral stand. In a time that was really gray, in a time where everybody felt opposite of her, she stood up for what she felt was morally appropriate. And I think that if we're going to be warriors in the name of Christ, if we're going to be NorthRoad that makes a difference, especially in a time where things are very gray, where lines are very crossed, we have to know who we are, we have to stand up for who we are, and we need to draw lines in the sand of what we're never going to be or accept in our life as okay. Now, let's clarify this to make it very, very clear. We have lines that are being crossed in our generation all over the place. All kinds of sexual lines, all kinds of drug lines. We have all kinds of things that used to be so black and white, and now they're more gray. Do we stop loving those people? No, we'll never stop loving people as a church and as a person, right? But here's what I'm watching the church do. Well, I don't want to say anything to them about their issue because if I do, they may get offended and leave. When did I ever act like that towards my friends? When did I go, well, I know he has don't do that. I know he's got the largest booger on his nose I've ever seen, but if I tell him he has that booger, he may get offended and leave. Anybody going to get offended if somebody tells you you got a booger on your face? Or if your zipper's down, right? We owe that to our friend to let you know that you have something inappropriate going on. And as Christians, to friends that we know that don't know the right way, I don't think we need to beat people over the head. I don't think we need to tell people they're dying and going to hell. I don't think we need to tell people that they're completely wrong and gross and disgusting. I think we need to say, hey, I love you, and because I love you so much, I will not lie to you. I'm going to take a moral stand and let you know what's truth. But our churches have become so gray in an effort to reach all people, and that is not what God was talking about. If I love someone with my whole heart, so much so that my heart shows that love through, then I ought to be able to say anything in truth because I know it's for their good. What do I gain? If I gain the whole world and get to the end of this life and I never shared with them the moral truth of Christ, Oh, they came and they sat with me every single week. But I never shared with them the crucial things that they needed to know that would let them know how to love God and to have a relationship with him. Church, I got to encourage you. We have got to take a clear moral stand in a very gray, divided time. We need to love people with everything that we are. We need to come to them with open arms. But we cannot be afraid to say, it's not okay to stay this way if you want to have a relationship with God. And we have got to find ways to say that. Is there going to be consequences? Are people going to walk away? Possibly. Best, you lost your queenship. But God protected her, and God will protect us. Number 2, I want you to go over to chapter 3, verse 1. After these things, this is talking about Mordecai, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman, remember the egotistical, also known as the Agagite. All right? Little interesting note on this I just want to tell you real quick. The Agagite, he says that word Agagite. Here's what that is. That's from King Agag of the Amalekites. And the Amalekites are the people, I don't know if you know this story, but way back before this, Saul was told by God, wipe out the Amalekites, and he let Agag live, right? And because he let Agag live, because he didn't deal with moral issues that God told him to deal with, here is Mordecai, hundreds of years later, fighting against another Amalekite who's got an ego problem that's trying to take down the purpose of God. Because it was never dealt with 100%. Isn't that interesting? Here we go. So after these things, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman the Agagite, the son of Hammedatha, and advanced him and set his throne above all the officials who were with him. And all the king's servants who were at the king's gate bowed down and paid homage to Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai did not bow down and pay homage. Then the king's servants who were at the king's gate said to Mordecai, why do you transgress the king's command? And when they spoke to him day after day, he would not listen to them. And they told Haman in order to see if Mordecai's words would stand. Mordecai took a spiritual stand. Again, we go out. There's a difference between a moral stand. We know what's right and wrong. And there's a difference between a spiritual stand, right? It is very easy sometimes to sit in those padded chairs and have our friends and have our small group and feel good and everybody tell you all these great things. And you know what? I'm really, really comfortable. And then it comes time to take that spiritual stand and you're like, no. I mean, seriously? I mean, I know that Tima and Lisa got baptized and that's a spiritual stand, but I'm not there. I'm not ready to make that statement for God. I don't know that I can do that, right? A warrior doesn't say that. A warrior looks at who God is and says, hey, God, I want to take any spiritual stand you call me to. If you're asking me to stand in the gap for a friend, I'll stand in the gap for a friend. If you're asking me to stand against my addictions, I'll stand against my addictions the best I can. If you want me to stand and bring glory to your name by being baptized in God, I will make that stand. Here's a question for you. Are you living the life of a warrior for God or a wimp for God when it comes to making spiritual stands? How many of you guys are making spiritual stands in your home that your kids see the godly man that you are? Or do they just see a man? It's a hard question. Wives, are you taking that spiritual stand in your home, setting down the foundations? I mean, here's the deal. I'm the leader of our home, but we all know who's the boss of our home. Right? Let's just be honest. Keep it real. And it needs a godly woman to be the boss. Are you taking that spiritual stand? Finally, and I think it's the most important one. Chapter 4, verse 12. This one deals with Esther. And they told Mordecai what Esther had said. And this is when Mordecai has come and told Esther that she needs to save the people. Then Mordecai told them to reply to Esther, do not think to yourself that by the king's palace you will escape more than any of the other Jews. For if you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will rise from the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house, you're going to perish. And who knows whether or not you were positioned for such a time as this. Here's what happens in a warrior's heart. Can I just explain it to you? We get comfortable in a chair, kind of like Queen Esther got comfortable in a nice robe and a big palace and some gold, whatever they were, to drink out of, right? Her life had completely changed and life got pretty comfortable. And God steps forward whenever we're comfortable and he says, I'm not as interested in you being comfortable as I'm interested in you being holy, as I'm interested in you fighting the things that are going to make you more like me. So I want you to stand sometimes and use your positional authority for my good. I think NorthRoad Church has an opportunity because it's positionally set up to reach Lincoln County like never a church has been set up before. And you may go, well, that's a really egotistical statement. I honestly believe the way God is moving in this place, the way God is reaching the Timas and the Lisas, that we have people in this church that have a unified heart, and we are positionally set to change lives like never before. And here's what it's going to take. Are you ready? It's going to take every single person in every single seat getting past their comfort zone, walking out of their palace, putting their golden chalice down, taking their robes off and going, I am ready to get dirty for the gospel and get a little grimy and get a little messy and reach people. In a year, we're going to be in December or January of 2017, 2018, we are going to be on that property. We know that now. We just met with a GC that told us how long it would take. Our goal is by December 2017, January 2018, to be on that 125 acres. You know what my goal is? Bigger than that building is that in the next year we would have 5 families that would step up and go, I feel called to foster or adopt a child. That we would stand up as a church and realize the best way we can reach a child, the best way we can reach somebody for Christ is bring them in our home and show them what it looks like to be Jesus. You know, I figured out the other day that when my son graduates, I'll be 59 years old. Holy crud. If you're 59, don't be insulted. But when you're 42, that seems like a long ways away. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to walk across the aisle, or I'm going to watch him walk across the aisle, and I'm going to be holding the cane. Now, if you're 59 and you're holding a cane, not holding a cane, good for you. But I think I probably will. And you know what? Can I tell you something? We're going to do it again. Do you know why we're going to do it again? Because God gave me a life to live on purpose. Because I've been positionally set up that I can house another kid. And so because of that, I'm going to do it. Because I believe that people need Jesus. And man, my challenge to you is if you're positionally set up, maybe you and your spouse need to sit down, you need to pray. I know we didn't plan on having another one, but can we bring another one in our house? Because what a better way to give somebody Christ. In the next year, we're going to take measures so that moms that have babies that don't know what they're going to do, we can help them more than ever before choose not to give up their child. Man, we have got to make some drastic movements in that area in the next year. We've got to help more and more people in Celebrate Recovery realize that addictions are not the way to go, that God has a greater plan for them. And sitting in this room are people that are going to help us get out to that property, are people who are going to adopt children, are people who are going to help moms in crisis, are people who are going to stand in the gap for people who have addictions and issues, and you're just waiting to be used by God because you're positionally set there. I love the story of Tamara and Tima, because you were positionally set up to change her life. Doesn't that feel good? That is what God is talking about. For such a time as this, you were here to change her life. And you all are sitting here with that same exact purpose. And if we will get warriors' hearts and leave wimpy hearts behind, you know what happens sometimes? We get our feelings hurt, or we get busy, or we get just preoccupied, and we go, I got so many other things I can't give to you right now, God, in a little while. Man, what would have happened if Esther would have waited a little while? Let me tell you what would have happened. God would have raised another one up who would take her place. And if we as NorthRoad Church do not rise up and answer the call that God has given us, you know what he'll do? He'll put another church in this town that will do what we failed to do. And as the leader, I am not going to let that happen. We have got to rise up, church. And you know what that means? Some of you are sitting there going, okay, I'm challenged, I'm ready. How do I do this? It means sitting and waiting and saying, God, bring that person to me. Identify that neighbor to me. Show me what I'm supposed to do next. Tell me how I can help build, how I can help give. Tell me whether or not I'm supposed to have a kid in my house. Tell me if I'm supposed to go serve in children's. Tell me if I'm supposed to go change the life of a youth. God, what am I supposed to do? And sit back and listen. Don't question. more than the average question, and then just say, okay, God. Some of you guys, you hate teenagers. What if he says to you, I want you to work in students? Heck no, right? I think the appropriate question would be, you serious, God? Yeah, I'm serious. Okay, let's go fight that journey. Because here's the deal. You who hate students, what would happen if God would use you to change their moral stand, to change their spiritual stand, to change their positional stand? Church, I don't think we've ever been primed more to move forward in a way that God can really use us to show this community what worship, connection, and service truly looks like. But it's going to take every single one of us to see our life on mission and then do it. I just moved into a new house. You know what my mission is at that new house? To know every single one of my neighbors and hopefully one day get them to NorthRoad. That's it. My boys are in love with baseball. You know what my goal is? It's not for them to go play Major League Baseball someday. Be awesome. Be a lot easier life with all that money. But I'm just kidding. It wouldn't be. It's a joke. Anyway, here's what my goal is for them. Are you ready? That they would use that as a witness in their life, that it would become their ministry, that they would take a moral, spiritual, and positional stand to make a difference in the lives of those around them. If that's not your goal, then you're not living the life of a warrior. You're living the life of a comfortable, average, everyday church member. And can I tell you something? There are churches full of them that are getting nothing done, and they're everywhere. Let's don't be that church. Not for 1 second, not for one moment, not for one day. Bow your head and close your eyes if you would. What's God calling you to? Maybe God's been calling you for a while to give your heart to him. And you said, oh, I don't know, God. There's just so many questions. You need to stop. You need to take that spiritual stand. You need to say, hey, Jesus, you can have my life. Hey, Jesus, I'll get baptized. If that's what you want, I will take that spiritual stand. Stop being that person, that weak person that continues to sit in that chair. Take that spiritual stand. If you're sitting in here right now and you know that's you, I just want you to do me a favor. I want you to raise your hand. Matt, I need to take that next step. I need to be baptized. I need to get saved. I need to take that spiritual stand. Let's stop being weak. Let's start being warriors for Christ. Who needs to do that? Just raise your hand. Nobody else is looking around but me and you. I'll give you a second. Okay? Awesome, man. Anybody else? Some of you guys, I know you've been contemplating this for a while. What's your weight? What's that magical date you're looking for? What if it's for such a time as this? That your testimony would mean something in the person of another's life. Let's be warriors together. Some of you are sitting in here right now and you're going, I have skated on this moral thing. I have tried to do everything to live in the gray, and God is calling me to live in the black and the white. Not when it comes to love. I need to be loved every single day, but I've lived in the gray. I've been tolerant of all these things, and I've allowed them to seep into my family. And some of you guys, you need to step back and you need to say, no more. I will love someone no matter what, but I don't have to tell them that it's okay. I can be that person that loves them enough to show them Christ. Maybe that's you, and you just need to say, hey, God, I'm sorry. I was really trying to love people, and I didn't realize living in the gray is not what you want. Some of you are sitting here, and God has positioned you to do something amazing for him, and you know exactly what that is. Or maybe you're sitting there and you're going, I have no idea what that is, and I want to know so bad. Ask him. Ask him to reveal his plan, just right now in this next few seconds. Then say yes. Father God, we love you. God, we want to fall at your feet. We want to serve you, God. We want to take a moral stand and a positional stand. We want to take a spiritual stand. I want you to follow behind me, God. I want you to walk in front of me. I want it to be your plan, not my plan. I don't want to create the weapons of defense. I want you to be my defense. And I want to see you move in this area. So God, use our church in a mighty way. In your name I pray. Amen. Let's stand. Let's sing.